What up, football fans all over the world? It is your boy, Mac the Giants fan, here with my guy, the super dope co-host, Adam Costas. You know what time it is. It's time for the real deal NFC East round up. Punch that intro. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Real Deal NFC East Roundup, man, with my guy, the super dope co-host, Adam Costas, man. What is going on with you, Adam? How you feeling out there, man?
I'm good. Football is back. We finally got a full slate of games to talk about, so it's going to be exciting to dive right in.
Absolutely. Week 1 of preseason is now in full effect. And the New York Football Giants has happened to be opening up the preseason this season Thursday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, hosting the Detroit Lions, man. We already pretty much seen how it's been going down all week in the joint practices. I mean, I can assume you're not going to be getting any of the starters out there tomorrow night in week 1 of the preseason game, or at least not many of them anyway. Pretty sure you're not going to see a Daniel Jones. You're not going to see Jared Goff, Ross A. Brown. You don't see none of those guys. Pretty sure you're not going to see Malik Neighbors as well, who's been out there mossing the secondary of the Detroit Lions. Just saying, that's what he's been doing, man. This kid been out there mossing them, man. He's been doing some damage. And so most likely, he probably got the best action you're going to get between the Lions and the Giants already throughout these few days of Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday's practice, man. So, Adam, any thoughts on how to feel about the joint practices going down this week, man?
I thought they were good. It showed a little fight and a little zest to the Giants, being a little feisty, that they're not going to take anyone's bullshit. But again, this is the beginning of the year. Everyone's happy. Everything's peaches and rainbows. But it's good that they stood up for themselves. They did have some trouble on defense. That's going to be their Achilles heel, I do feel. I think the offense is not going to be spectacular, but it'll do enough to score some points, especially when you got a guy like Malik Neighbors. He will give you seven points, not every game, but at least get you in scoring range a lot of the time. So it'll be fun to watch his maturity. We'll see how this offensive line holds up when the games really matter. They did a decent job, but again, you're only watching practice clips. You're not there. You don't necessarily know exactly what situations they're working on, like in the huddle, and what their game plan was. So we have to take a lot with a grain of salt. But the same things have happened in practice with defense all year, right? Malik Neighbors torching cats, and the defense giving up touchdowns. Same thing kind of played out this week. As for the preseason game, for me, I need them to play. And it's interesting, something popped up on Twitter that kind of, got into the Giant Twitter space, was the Kansas City Chiefs are going to play their starters for like at least a quarter or something like that, or the majority of the quarter. Yet the Giants, who need the work, mind you, are going to possibly, quote unquote, use their work with the practices to not get guys in. And I'm not necessarily against this approach. However, I think when you're trying to get a guy back from injury and trying to get a lot of moving pieces together, the more reps they get, the better. Especially you're probably only going to get them big time reps in game number 2, and then in game 3 against the Jets, you're probably not even going to play most of those guys, or a quarter at best, right? I mean, Aaron Rodgers not playing for the Jets, but he's 12 years in a system that he already knows. We have a guy who we have to see get chemistry with Malik Neighbors, and I think Neighbors might play a little bit because, again, you want him to get that game time setting. Not necessarily he has to play a full drive or anything, or a full quarter, but maybe a drive, or two, get hit by somebody that's not in practice, or, because those guys are going to some of those guys are going to try to make a team. So there's going to be guys out there trying to tackle you, and you can't play scared. And I would like to see Drew Lock with the first team and what he can do behind a solid offensive line as well, and see if he can with actual weapons. So we'll see what happens, man. Give him give them 2 series, right? We only had 1 drive last year. We came out and looked like shit, right? They should build up, get a couple drives, get chemistry going, so that they play together. And then because what you don't want to have to happen is you go up against, let's say, Minnesota, right? Game 1. And Minnesota has played, not only have they played Sam Darnold with the first team, but they played J.J. McCarthy with the first team. The first team's gelling. They got everything going, and you haven't played a single rep. And whether or not we believe it, that does matter a little bit, because it's all about routine and timing, right? You're just trying to get that first hit out of the way, because when you're in camp these days, you don't really tackle people, right? You hit them, you thud them, as you call it. And if anyone's played high school, you had your lead up days. You had your half pads on like Wednesday, your thuds were your full body on Thursday, and then Friday you're hitting, or vice versa. Wednesday you're hitting hard, Thursday you're thudding, and then Friday you're in half pads, right? So my point is, you should get this guy some reps to see if his timing is off, when the rush is actually coming with him, if he's gonna be there. It's nothing against him. I thought he wasn't gonna play. It's looking like he might not play, but people have pushed back on me and said that they really think he should. And after thinking through it and seeing the Kansas City Chiefs, who have been to the Super Bowl 3 times, take the preseason serious, and teams like Baltimore who take the preseason serious. Remember, Baltimore had that undefeated record, some shit. So that's how you build that mentality of, it's not just a game, right? And my last point is, because I know there's limited reps with these guys, right? With the younger guys. So you probably want to feature the younger guys a little more. The preseason has done this to themselves. When they get to 18 games, they're going to reduce to only 2 preseason games, right? So now you're going to have to do your evaluations differently. So right now, you need to figure out what your team is, because you have your core guys who need to play, and those are the guys that are most important. The backup guys are backup guys. You hope that they're going to play, but your coaching is what's supposed to elevate them in practice and get them to where they need to be, so that when they get into a game, their assignment sound. So, maybe we should ask who you're looking forward to seeing in the game that you do think is going to play.
First let me hit on a couple, because you made some really good points, and I agree with a lot of them. Personally, I feel like, especially with a team especially when you use the Kansas City Chiefs as an example, this is a team that's championship pedigree, a team that's battle tested. They've been through wars over the last several seasons. They've been in the mix for a title every year, and once again, coming into this season, just on the strength of Patrick Mahomes alone, right, this team is still always going to be a championship contender. But, and like you said, they're going to go out there and get that work in the preseason. Whereas you would think that's a team that could rest their guys a little bit and give their guys a little bit of a break. But they're still going to go out there and give them that work. This New York Giant team needs the work, point blank and period. Daniel Jones needs the work. The offensive line needs the work. You got to get these guys. You got to see who your best 5 guys are. You got to get out there and see who really wants it. This offensive line has been abysmal. They need all the reps they can get. Literally all the reps they can get. So you can't really be holding back right now. This team needs to get out there and show what they can do. They've come off a pretty strong week of practice overall against a good team in his joint practices, and now roll that into the game and still continue that momentum. Like you said, Malik Neighbors, as great as he's been in these training camp practices, he still hasn't really had that real taste of real NFL game action. And the preseason is not, where it's not the regular season and all. It's still, you'll get that speed, that and understand a little bit more of an understanding, a little more of a grasp on things. You know what I mean? So I agree 100%. These guys, I think league wide teams need to start taking the preseason significantly more seriously, man. And just get out there and let you. You can't be scared of guys getting hurt. Right. This is football. Guys get hurt. It is what it is. So. Whereas, sure, we don't want to see guys going down in the preseason, but at the end of the day, you can't. if it's going to happen, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. I mean, you got to go out there and get these guys. I'm not saying be stupid, be smart about things, but you got to go out there and let them get the work that they need. And this team needs work.
I mean, like, preseason is what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be preseason. But now that you're condensing the games, you have less time to gear up, right? Right now, practice is done for the fans as of, I think, last week. So we've had like a week or two of practice, right? So now,
What's up, Miz?
While I like to have preseason, this team can't just rest on its laurels saying, well, we went up against the Lions. We're cool. We kind of hung with them. We can scale it back. To me, it's like, all right, we went up against the Lions. We know we're going to play the Lions, not now, but we know we're going to play this personnel. Let's get out there and work on the things that we need to work on situationally, right? You use this for situational football. I'll give you two things I want to say. One, the Panthers are doing a disservice. Why am I going to the Panthers? Because they're another team that should follow the motto of playing in the preseason. They're sitting their young quarterback, which I think is dumb because you need the reps, right? The other thing I'm going to say to you is, and why am I saying this? Is because I believe in continuity. The offensive line, Van Routen is playing center right now. Okay, if you tell me that guy is going to take time off, right? You're going to take him out of the game. Well, you're already taking him out of game reps that he hasn't had as a center, right? And I feel that this needs to happen for him because obviously JMS is not here. He's going to be the starter come minutes. And right now, you can't rely on him being here going forward. So you got to rely on the guys you have. Illuminor needs work as well next to each other. I just feel that the continuity of it. But if you look at, and people love history. I know I'm going on a rambling thing. I shouldn't have mentioned the Panthers, but I was trying to get them to say to play your young guys, regardless of the status. That's why I use that. But my last point I want to say is Bill Parcells used to use the preseason as like a litmus test, right? If you're not playing that team, you don't want to show them things because, he remembered in the preseason of the game, they used a certain personnel package and then boom, down the road, they used it again. So I get you want to be vanilla, but take this game and utilize it for what it's worth, what it's there for. You don't get many football games with the 5 guys you got starting as your offensive line. You don't get many football games to gas up. And to me, I know you want to sit Van Routen and all these guys, but Van Routen just came off the bench. He's now playing a new position, and you're going to sit him? Why? I don't get it, right? And the other thing I want to say is I want to see the backup guys they brought in, because to me, as much as I want them, they don't like you. Why are you starting a center at the normal center position, right? You're starting Van Routen. So to me, don't rest on your laurels because you played a decent team in the Lions, and whether you believe the Lions went hard. Whatever you came out of the evaluation with, don't just be like, well, we're cool, we did that, and now we're good to go. Go in there and use this as a teachable moment. Like, let's see how good your leg holds up at MetLife Stadium, right? You've been on grass all day. Now let's give your body a little bit different feel that it's going to be, right? The running back hasn't run with this line in motion. You're playing against your team, and if anybody knows football practice, you kind of know the tendencies of your guys, right? So this will be a good test to see different people. That's all. That's what I believe. I'm sorry I went on that rant. Probably was incoherent.
No, yeah. No, I just go back to something you said too a while back about what the actual practices themselves and then defense. Like offensively, I think the offense definitely did a lot better this week against the Lions than the New York Giant defense. The New York Giant defense did indeed have its struggles, but most of those struggles came where I think most people expected them to come, and that was on the back end of this defense. The secondary was out there getting torched quite a bit. They had Lions receivers were running wide open quite a bit, a lot more than you would like to see. A lot of busted coverages, and that's I guess, to be expected with such a young group back there. And that goes back to what we were just talking about. Yeah, these guys, they need to get out there and get that work, and they need to see things. And, most teams aren't going to show you so much in the preseason anyway, but at the end of the day, reps are still invaluable, man. And that's secondary, I think, is where this defense is going to have a lot of his struggles, especially in the early going in the season. I mean, things you've been hearing about this week, Brian Burns was in the Lions backfield often, quite a bit. And I mean, Kayvon Thibodeau was pretty solid. Not quite, he wasn't quite as consistent as Brian Burns, but he was very solid. And Dexter Lawrence he's Dexter Lawrence. I mean, he's an absolute stud, top. Maybe at this point now we can say a top 2 or 3 player at his position for sure. And
at least.
And and Bobby Okereke, another guy has heard good things about this week in this joint practice. So like I said, it's really the back end, I think, is where the Giants really need to figure something out. I was listening to Jason Pinnock talking the other day after practice, you know what I mean? And the fact that he's kind of having to take on somewhat of a leadership role at this juncture of his Giants tenure, you know what I mean? When he's only been here for a couple of years, is damn so. And he's already kind of feeling thrusted into somewhat of a leadership role back there. It's just, those are the kind of things that you want to see this hope this young defense can develop and turn into something pretty decent. But right now, I think it's safe to say that there's going to be some struggles back there on that back end. Any concerns with that?
Two things that concern me that I've heard so far about the defense. One is the broken coverages, which I think is going to happen. You want to happen in training camp, but they're happening too frequent for me to be like something like this guy from the other defense that he played with Tennessee said things didn't get fixed in this defense. You know, they just kind of moved on to the next thing. And when you see guys getting torched left and right for 2 weeks straight, it doesn't bode well for what they're doing in the back end schematically, where it's probably a little bit more complicated because you're playing zone defense, right? So it's basically, at the end of the day, it's going to be a bend but don't break defense. So that's what I'm nervous about on that end. The other thing I'm nervous about is Azeez Ojulari, and this guy brings up a great question about players on the bubble, right? Azeez Ojulari, to me, I heard that they're not going to. He wasn't rotating in with the top 3 the outside linebackers. Like, he's kind of going to be a rotational player. He's not going to really have a ton of reps. And to me, if he's not a scheme fit, you've got to find a way to get him either on the field or off the team and get value for him, because I don't want to waste a guy because you're going to play Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau 90% of the time, which, by the way, I don't like what they're doing with Brian Burns, dropping him back into coverage. That's not what he needs to do. He needs to go. You need to just pull that guy. You remember them toys? You used to have the pull strings. Them dolls that used to have, right? Well, that's what you need to do with Brian Burns. Just pull the string and let him go. Okay? Don't worry about dropping into coverage, any of that bullshit. Go get the quarterback. Go get the ball carrier. I don't care where you do. Go get. That's what LT was. Go get the ball carrier, right? When you drop the guys back in there into coverage, you're taking away their abilities. But if you're going to keep these guys on the field 90% of the time, and you're going to make Azeez Ojulari kind of a replacement player and not a factor in your defense, it's kind of one of those things like he's on the last year of his contract. If he does get to play in preseason and you come down to cut day and somebody has a guy you might want to, trade for or get assets for to build in the draft, because again, you have to think about next year as well, because as much as we like preseason, this team does have a lot of holes still on it, and you don't want them to rear their ugly head with being negligent with this roster. So what's his role going to be? I'm a little nervous that he may not have a role here. Isaiah Simmons is getting more burned than he is. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. We're going to find these things out. So those are a couple of concerning things to me. To answer this guy's question, I don't mean to flip it on the other side of the ball, but do I see Isaiah Hodgins getting cut? I'll answer you like this. Something interesting happened with the Atlanta Falcons today, where they lost, I think, Darnell Mooney for the year. His leg is in an air cast. Not good. But now we have a receiver on the roster, well, 2 maybe, if you count Isaiah Hodgins, who are capable receivers in this league. Do you trade them? Do you give Atlanta a call and say, hey, we have Darius Slayton here? Because if you look at practice, Darius Slayton is not getting as many reps as Hyatt and Wandale and Malik, right? And it's the Malik show right now. And you're also getting guys contributing with Allen Robinson and Gunnar Roshinsky, right? The punt returner, and I think Dable said something about there's going to be a battle for punt return job. So where did that leave Isaiah Hodgins and Darius Slayton, who both don't play um, special teams? To me,
Specials.
those guys need to be traded. If you're going to cut them, try to trade them first. Do I think Isaiah Hodgins on the bubble? I absolutely believe that. I like Isaiah Hodgins. I wish he got more burn last year, but obviously something didn't mesh well. I don't know what. I can't tell you. And if he has a great preseason, maybe you trade him. I thought he was a decent player. I thought he would be a great red zone threat, 6'4". I really was rooting for the kid. But he's buried down the depth chart with the three other guys I mentioned, not to mention a guy in Darius Slayton who, let's be honest, they put incentives in his contract, which I don't, you and I, between you and me, Mac, I don't know if he's going to reach those incentives. So maybe these two guys should be on somebody else's team that is getting injured, right? Maybe you say, hey, Atlanta, we got Isaiah Hodgins here. He's played, he's in a playoff game. We have Darius Slayton here. What do you want to do? Now it's time, Joe Shane, to negotiate. Look at your roster because let's be honest, the Giants have some guys who may not be the greatest players, but if they decided, let's say they had a bad season, or if they have a bad season, or struggle this season, that you should think about getting rid of if they're on the team longer than that. Now, I would probably rather do it now, but Darius Slayton's one of those guys, and Isaiah Hodgins. See if he has some value. Go float it out there. If you cut Isaiah Hodgins and he walks away, and let's say he goes back to Buffalo, or he goes to another team, right, and he ends up contributing there or doing something, and you let him go. You let him go for nothing. The guy's been here 3 years, right? I mean, it means something. You kept him around. And teams need receivers. He's a capable one. So him and Darius Slayton are on the bubble, I do believe. More so Isaiah Hodgins than Slayton. But I just wanted to bring that up quickly. I'm sorry. Again, I'm rambling. I'll give the mic to
No, I just add to that. I don't think he's on the back. Isaiah Hodgins he might make it all the way to the last, to the last final cuts, but I think he's gonna definitely. I just don't see it happen. I mean, even room right now, Malik Neighbor speaks for himself. Obviously, the emergence of Wandale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt, who are just both having tremendous camps as well. And then, like you said, a guy like Darius Slayton, even though he kind of could be a bubble guy, I think he's still held in at least in higher regard with the staff than Isaiah Hodgins. You got a couple other young guys like a Bryce Ford Wheaton also that on this roster. Allen Robinson, veteran guy like Allen Robinson that you just might get that consideration around just because of his veteran presence and things he can add to the room from that standpoint, as well as the things he can still get done on the field. So I just think it's going to be really tough for Isaiah Hodgins to make this team, man. I can see him making it all the way through to the process, like I said. But when it comes down to those final cuts, I believe he's going to be one of them, unfortunately. And I agree with you also, Adam. If there's a way you can find a way to maybe get something for him, it's not going to be much regardless. But at the end of the day, something is always better than nothing. And I think you may want to go explore that option because he has proven to be a guy that, in the right situation, can make plays for a team, man, and he come up big in some big moments every once in a while. So he's a guy, like you said, he's seen a little bit. He's got a little bit of experience, and he was kind of a big part of down the stretch for the New York Giants in that playoff year a couple of seasons ago. I mean, he definitely was a big contributor to some positives with this football team at the back end of that season. So,
the thing I want to mention is this quickly is like if a team like Atlanta is 8 in the waiver wire, right? Because right now the waiver wire goes by your draft order, meaning until you get into the season, then it goes by your record, right? So if for whatever reason Atlanta wants to put in a waiver claim for a guy, and let's hypothetically speaking say, Tennessee wants a receiver, right? They're not going to be able to get Isaiah Hodgins if that team wants it. So what you might want to do is say, hey, listen, Giants, we lost Darnell Mooney. He's not going to be a huge, he's down the depth chart, obviously, on their hierarchy of receivers. Maybe we can trade. Maybe we can talk about Isaiah Hodgins or Darius Slayton in that regard, and get a draft pick. Now, Darius Slayton probably will get you a bigger haul. Isaiah Hodgins should get you a late round pick, anyways, right? And say, listen, instead of waiting and hoping that the Chargers, or because the Chargers may need receiving help, or Arizona, or even a team down the road, you don't know who's going to want to put in a waiver claim for who. So this might be able to be like, hey, listen, look. I know that they lost a receiver in Tennessee. They're looking to get a guy immediately. Do you want to do business? Something like that. If you're a good GM, you're making those calls. So, and again, it all depends on who they like. If they like Bryce Ford Wheaton, who they brought in as an undrafted free agent, more so than Hodgins, it's going to probably go to youth movement. Again, I think he might make the team. He might be the fifth guy. I think right now, if you want my honest truth, gun to my head, I think the fifth spot's between him and Allen Robinson. And whoever wins that, because the sixth spot is going to go to the punt returner, which is either Isaiah McKenzie or Gunnar Olszewski. And it'll probably go to Isaiah McKenzie because Gunnar Olszewski, I think, is still a rookie. So you probably put him on the practice squad, right, and keep McKenzie in there. And then that gives you a backup slot receiver to Wan'Dale Robinson, right? So you have all the backups there. So that's probably where you're fighting, because I don't think they're keeping 7 receivers. I just don't think that's a little too much. So, but that's all I have with that. Here are some other people before we move on. They were talking about motor, turbo, and transmission Tracy. American Muscle. Let's go get it. That's pretty funny. Pretty funny.
Everybody's been getting quite a bit of receiver work. Quite a bit of receiver work at camp, but most if he makes the roster, we know what he's going to be there to do. Mostly, he's going to be his team. But what's going on too? By the way, no mess, no nets, no Jets, man. Pop in there, man.
No Jets.
Always appreciate you, bro.
Our guy,
Does Eric Gray make the team? Does Eric Gray make the team?
Are you asking or going to answer first? My thoughts are no. I don't think he is.
I'm seeing right now, it's going to be tough. I mean, he's not having the greatest camp from what I'm seeing. He's not necessarily standing out, so to speak. The things that Tracy is doing right now, he's definitely establishing himself as a guy that's going to be that would take reps away. I mean, I wouldn't think they're keeping no more than like 3 running backs on the active roster.
How many did they have last year?
No more than 3.
They had Barkley, they had Burrito, and who else did they have? They had somebody else. I know they didn't have everybody, but
they're good. They're good.
And I think they had Gary Brightwell as well, but they got rid of Brightwell. So basically they had 3 backs because Eric Gray played the kick returner, right? So let's just say Eric Brightwell wasn't there. Let's just get rid of Gary Brightwell. Right? I don't think
I did get rid of Gary Brightwell.
They did get rid of Brightwell, but what I'm saying for this argument, because last year what I'm saying is they're going to keep Devin Singletary. They're going to probably keep Tracy because they invested a draft pick in him, and they're going to keep Turbo because right now, if you were to put them pound for pound against each other, Turbo's having a better camp than Eric Gray right now, and he's also playing special teams. Which again, if you don't need Eric Gray to play special teams, what do I need you for, right? And someone said, well, Eric Gray is a bigger back. He can do the short yardage stuff. Devin Singletary, people, is a downhill runner. I don't think you guys understand that, his name is, when they call him Motor, right? Devin Singletary, right? So he's a one-cut runner. He's not the flashiest guy. Like I was watching highlights of him today with the Texans versus the Titans, and he really didn't get – it wasn't the Titans, sorry. It was Tampa Bay. And he really didn't get much in terms of the passing game. He wasn't the greatest out of the backfield. And when you strung him out, he wasn't great. But downhill, he's great. So anyways, you're going to keep him. Tracy's going to be that multifaceted Alvin Kamara type where you're going to line him probably up a receiver in the backfield, do your crazy little gadget plays, right? Turbo is probably going to be your kick returner and possibly, your change of pace back when you decide to, get a little speed in the back on third downs and things like that. It'll all depend on who they block. And they have Eric Gray, right? So to me, again, it comes down to roster construction. The top three guys I mentioned are all doing something in practice, like doing something positive in practice. Turbo, you hear about him in the comments. You hear about Tracy and what they're going to do with the comments. He's like, oh, some people are like, he's fighting for first team reps. And then you have Devin Singletary, who, by the way, isn't doing anything really high or low. He's just kind of there, right? I hope this is not a what's that guy, Jonathan Stewart type of hire where, the real running back is going to be like Turbo and Tracy. But I think Devin Singletary will come out and start. So, Gary, does he make the team? Probably not. My money, no. I'm going to say no.
I think if he could have shown a little more special teams a season ago when he had those opportunities and it was questionable, it was shaky at best most of the time, him back there, I think he would have came into this camp with a lot better opportunity. But I just think right now what the guys are doing and the fact that that he's not really an answer on special teams. Yeah, it's going to be tough for Eric Gray this year. I mean, he was a late round draft pick, and at the end of the day, he's not. It's not the end of the world letting him walk.
He might make the practice squad. I mean, that's not out of the realm.
That's a possibility. I mean, because he didn't really show up that much. I don't know for teams unless he goes out there and has great in the preseason games. I feel like he'll get a lot of opportunities in the preseason games. He'll be a guy that'll definitely get those reps. And
let's talk about that for a minute, because maybe right now, let's change that up, right? We should ask, does Eric Gray make the team after the third preseason game? Because a lot can happen from now until cutdown day, right? You could get Turbo, for all we know, Turbo come out, pull a hamstring on Thursday tomorrow, and he's out 4 weeks or on PUP or whatever, and then by attrition, Gray makes the team, right? So right now, if we were to make the roster today and answer that question as of this moment, I would not think he's on the roster. Ask me that again after the preseason to see what will happen. The answer could still be no, because maybe those three guys make it through. But if somebody gets nicked up or banged up or injured, it happens all across the board, it could be a different story.
That is also facts. I don't think, given the fact that Eric Gray was a draft pick from a season ago, he'll definitely get an opportunity. I would think if like I said, if he gets cut, anything I said, Isaiah Hodgson, it wouldn't be like probably the final cuts. He wouldn't be like an early cut by no means or anything like that. He wouldn't be like amongst those first batch guys getting sent out the door. But like I said, time will tell. The preseason will be very important for a guy like Eric Gray to go out there and show it. And I think last year he didn't get that many opportunities and flashes. He had a couple of flashes of some things he can do. I mean, he's not a burner by any means, but a game breaker. But he has an ability. He just has to put it all together, man. Wish the young man luck. Ultimately, with the guys they feel can do contribute the most to this football team, most to this offense. So Eric Gray, they feel like they're gonna be Eric Gray. They may be showing him the door, man.
Practice squad is what I would say.
Yeah, but I mean that's about it from the Giants right now, man. This week, got to get them all, see how they come out, see what they're going to do, see who they're going to play. Me and Adam both express our feelings on that. You know how we both feel about that. I mean, I think these guys should play as well as Adam. I agree. Like they need to get these reps in, and I don't know why you think we're in a situation where we can sit back and just not give these guys the
it's never worked for us. We've done that since the Shermer era.
Yeah, and just got to get some work in, man. I remember back in the day in preseason, players played in preseason back in the day. I don't know, like this. It's like this is what I mean about. I get evolution and all this other crap of the league and everything, but back in the day, guys played in the preseason. It was almost like it was a script, man. Every year the preseason was the same way, man. The first Stars might come out. They might get it. You might only see them for a series or two in the first game. The second game, you might get them for a whole quarter. The third game was always a dress rehearsal where you get the starters for definitely like a whole half into the third quarter. And then the fourth game, it would be like, they probably wouldn't get, starters wouldn't get much work if they got any, if any at all. And it was like every year was exactly the same way, but it was like that. It wasn't very, you didn't look around the league and see very many guys just not playing in preseason ever. Right? I mean, Damian Thomason was a guy that pretty much his whole career only in preseason during his rookie season. But at the end of the day, he wasn't a lot of guys like that back in the day. A lot of it was, I don't know, it's just weird the way things have gone, and now players just basically sit out the preseason now. Like, it's just not an important part of getting preparation to get ready for the season.
Well, the thing is that what you talk about is true, right? They used to have the preseason games stack up, but it doesn't make sense to me that they don't play preseason, because the regular season now becomes the preseason, and that's why you have sloppy football for the first 4.5 weeks of the year, because nobody plays, and that's why teams like Kansas City, who do play their starters, have a chemistry because they work through the adversity, right? You're not really getting the same third down situation. They throw a flag on you, but does the play stop dead? No, it doesn't stop dead. Those are things you have to work on, the procedural things, right? So, like, to me, I just think you should play your team and, gear them up, right? First preseason game, second preseason. And I would even play them this third preseason game more, 2 quarters at least, because you don't play another football game for 2 weeks, right? You don't play another football game for 2 weeks, right? The last preseason game is, if I look at the calendar here, is I think like the 30th, the 23rd. Okay, it's the 23rd. You got the 8th this weekend. I think it's the 16th. Let me just look at their schedule on paper.
It is. It's like a bye week after that, pretty much. Like a bye week for everybody, pretty much.
So it's the 25th is roughly when, like, the it's ending. That's a Sunday. So that's basically 2 weeks. You got the 26th to then you don't play football till, I think, probably this year the 8th. Right, so we're talking about a 2-week hiatus.
Just the first game.
You got a 2-week hiatus to not playing, and that's a lot that can go down in that 2 weeks. And I just feel like, to me, a team like the Giants, you're not a good team yet. You may have good practices, but you're not a good team. Okay, you haven't earned that right yet. You haven't earned the right to sit back and say, we're going to relax here. Okay, especially when I look over at the league and I hear that Kansas City is going to play their guys for a quarter. I've got to look at that and say, well, what are they doing that I'm not? How come they're playing our guys and I'm not? They win every year. Is that the edge that we need? Is that the more reps that we need to correct some things? Like, is that preseason game? Like, why do the Baltimore Ravens care so much about the preseason? What are they doing? That team is always finishing in the tournament. So, and then there are other teams that don't need it at all. I get it, and won't play their guys. But to me, it's like boxing. If you don't spar with anybody and then you just jump into the ring, it's going to be sloppy for your first half of your fight while you're getting your sea legs under you. Then the second half of the fight might actually be good, because now you're realizing, okay, live bullets are flying, and now I got my reflexes, as opposed to having a couple of sparring events and coming out swinging in round 1. I know it's a weird analogy, but that's how I feel when you don't play preseason, and that's what I also think leads to injuries, leads to poor tackling, leads to just a lot of things. Remember, you said back in the day, you remember the 80s. The 80s, they were hitting people in preseason. They were talking about, if you ever listen to Taylor talk and those guys talk, they said we had preseason and the 2-a-days to build callus on our bodies because we hit each other so much that it would strengthen our bodies. Now you look at it, right? They don't do 2-a-days. They do 1-a-days, right? The practices are usually shorter. You can't hit the quarterback like you could. I remember Bill Parcells told LT to go hit Phil Simms, and he goes, why? Because he said he wanted to get him to feel what it's like to get hit and actually, shake it off, right? That you would be Brian Dable went off on a guy almost touching Daniel Jones in the pocket in practice right now. So you could tell the atmosphere and how different it is. And I myself truly believe, and I understand they're trying to get CTE out of the game and all that stuff. I get it. I understand it. But there's something to be said for having 2-a-day practices and building up that callus, which allowed your guys to be tougher, allowed your guys to build more of a camaraderie, and the product was better out the game.
I agree. 300%, man. They just need to get back to it, man. The game is football. I don't know what else to tell you. It's a violent game, and people get hurt. It just is what it is. I mean, you know what you're signing up for. Nobody's putting a gun to your head and making you use. This is what you do. So you just got to go out there and give us the best product. And like you said, it just affects so much. The tackling, the blocking, and everything is affected by the way they go about things, the structure. They got all these clauses. Oh, you can't. There's collective bargaining agreements where you can't hit in practice and all this craziness and all. You can only wear. You got to wear shells in this day. I mean, a coach should be able to run his practice the way he should.
Right.
Blanking period. If you want shoulder pads on your guys and have to go out there 4 times a week, that's what you should do. You should be allowed to. There shouldn't be some rule and saying you can't do this because
if you don't want to play,
collective bargaining agreement.
Somebody will do it. Well, listen. You know what it is, really? And this is another football topic. It's more like they don't want to pay out the insurance and get sued at the end of the year, so they're trying to put it. But I know that when you sign on the dotted line, it should be a clause. Like if I go play paintball tomorrow, right? I sign a waiver that if I die, I can't sue, the place that I play paintball on, or sue them for any injuries that might happen while playing paintball. Same thing with football. Once you sign that contract, these are our parameters. If anything happens, you can't be liable because that's how it is, right? So that's just how the clause is. You will take care of them in terms of injuries, like if they get injured and blah blah blah. That's why I have injury reserve and all these doctors and everything like that. But at the end of the day, this collective bargaining agreement, you only get better by hitting in practice. I know that for me, when I got to games, I was more relieved at games because practice was so intense. Like practice was so intense, hitting and tackling and doing all that shit. Yeah. When I got to the game, it was second nature. I was like, oh, this is nothing, right? Because it's so much more controlled and everything like that. Practice is like a free for all. I mean, you were doing bull in the China closet, like bull in the ring, or if everyone's done at the Oklahoma drills, things like that to build up your cows. And we were doing that in the middle of the week sometimes. If we were not tackling that well last week, guess what? We're not in shells and shoulder pads and taking no. We're back in shoulder pads, hitting each other to learn how to tackle. And then when you get to the game, it's like, oh man, this is such a relief, right? So, and I do believe your body builds a callus, and that means a lot. That why do you see so many soft tissue injuries? Guys go out for hamstrings for like weeks now. You can't see a guy for weeks. He's got the calf injuries. And oh, by the way, look at the Jets did last year. They held their quarterback damn near out of preseason, and he comes out the first game of the year and blows out his Achilles, right? So it's not – I'm not saying it's going to change the way it is. He could have blown out his Achilles playing preseason. It wouldn't have mattered. That destiny was happening regardless, right? That Achilles was going to pop regardless of if he played the first game or the last game. It was going to go, right? So you can't – at the end of the day, you can't play scared. They're not playing – Aaron Rodgers, and I guess if I'm the Jets, I guess he's earned that right. But again, like you said, you're getting paid millions of dollars, but you also are getting paid to hit somebody. And they're going to have 18 games on the schedule next year or soon, right? You're going to have to increase the rosters to like almost 90 guys on the roster. You're going to be keeping guys now longer and longer. So you might as well add the physicality to the game, because if you watch the tackling, like, look at the tackling. Go back to LSU. We were talking about Odell Beckham Jr. because Link Neighbors came up. And if anybody remembers that game, there was a guy, his name was Ramos McDonald, I think, and he was just trying to fly in and hit Odell with, his shoulder pads. He wasn't even using a form tackle. He wasn't doing anything like normal. He was just using his helmet and trying to just hit the guy out, right? And that's the difference. And I do attest that type of tackling to less tackling with the collective bargaining agreement. Because you're not doing it on a daily basis, and the intensity is, everyone says, oh, practice, you can tackle. The intensity is way down. I told you about those Oklahoma drills. In high school, it's up because you have nowhere to go. In the NFL, it's way down. They don't do it because, again, it's a business, right? But when you get to the game, why is it a train wreck every time you hit each other? Because they don't form tackle. That's why Michael McFadden missed tackles all year last year. I bet you that if you tackled from day one to the day of start of training camp and you went into those games, he's not missing as many tackles.
He wouldn't be. He wouldn't be. That's a fact. Like you said, you can't. That's how you get good at practicing, and they don't do it anymore. It's too much. It's too much. It's hitting bags. That's not the same thing. It's not the same. It's not the same. An actual person.
Mac, you played football growing up in high school. I'm sure you can remember that. We didn't use tackling.
Absolutely.
Now we didn't. We used a single pad sled once in a while, but we did most of our hitting against each other.
Yeah, absolutely. This is where we are now, man. This is where we are. I'm all for safety. I get it, but at the same time,
you get a bad product.
Got to still keep the integrity of the game. You got to keep the integrity of the game intact.
They roll that donut thing, right? You've seen this in practice. They have this donut thing that the guys tackle, and they tackle it and twist, right? I'm like, that's a rolling donut. That goes in a line when you roll it. That's not how a person doesn't go in a line like that. A person doesn't just roll and so you tackling that thing is a stationary item that's just rolling in a same spot, right? And that's not happening in a game. In a game, you've got a guy's foot moving, he's juking you, he's moving his shoulders. There's something when it comes to tackling that your body can understand. And then what you have is you have a guy like the guy on the Lions, number 31, who doesn't tackle, he just puts his head at your knees, right? Because he's taught to go low in the strike zone because you can't hit anybody these days. The strike zone, which is, the torso, gets smaller and smaller, so now you can only hit the knee. The NFL is legislating hitting out the game almost. And what they need to do is say, fuck it. Do what you signed on for this fucking game. You can't sue us after this. We're paying you a boatload of money and play at your own risk. Do it like you do with the lifeguards. If you go swimming after 5 o'clock and the lifeguards aren't there, you can't sue the beach because the beach has a sign that says swim at your own risk, right? That's what should be in every clause when you play football. Say, play at your own risk because you can't sue us later on. Because, and you hear a lot of guys say, I play for free. Well, guess what? You play. If something happens, that's it. It shouldn't be collectively, because if you want a good product, I want a better product than what they put out now. People are going to go to the Canadian Football League. The NFL is going to legislate out all hitting and tackling. And it's going to be a slop fest. And people are going to get why do you think there's so many injuries the first 4 weeks of the year?
Yeah, I already know. Like I said, it's I don't know. It's kind of ridiculous to me. I never understood it. I never understand like I said, the safety thing is one thing, but just the changes it's just too much, man. It's too much. These guys, like you said, not conditioned to take the hits anymore. They're not even conditioned to take the hits, conditioned to deliver them. It's like you said, the game has gotten sloppier and sloppier.
Right.
Every season, I feel like it's kind of a joke to watch. But that's we kind of went deep down there, a little deep down there, but it happens from time to time. Let's move it along a little bit. Let's talk about the Eagles and Ravens on Friday night. Eagles going down, taking on the Ravens. And preseason action, I mean, not much of a matchup in preseason. Nobody really cared preseason game, but this would be a big-time matchup if it was the regular season, man. What's going on, heavyweight chat, man? Appreciate you stopping it, man. Like I said, hope you take it. Hope we can read this tape, man, and you nail it, man. I hope you're right, man. I hope you're on the money with that, but yeah, we're going to have to wait and see, man. If DJ can earn that kind of an extension, he's going to have to do some really, really spectacular things, brother.
I think if that happens, I'm going to be a Bengal fan.
But thanks for stopping in, Chet. Well, moving on the Eagles, Ravens, Eagles. What's going on in the Eagles camp? I mean, it's been a little bit of drama going on, man. What's going on with things about Nick Sirianni too, the coach, man? I'm not that up on it all, but there's not a lot going on. Just fill him in, Adam.
I live deep in Eagle country, and I have some Eagle friends of mine who kind of keep me in the loop of the team, right? And so they have. If you guys don't know, we'll talk about Nick Sirianni in a minute, and we'll talk about a few other things with them. But um, you know what? Let's start with Nick Sirianni. Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts seem to be getting along together. They were shown together riding off in a golf cart together. So who knows if that thing is mended. We'll see at the end of the year. I do hear that the offense is a little different. There's more motion with Kellen Moore. That they're not so stagnant. He's calling a different game, and Nick Sirianni is kind of the overseer and kind of touching every part of the game. So that might lead to bonding. One thing is Jalen Hurst apparently is looking pretty good in practice. He has 158 attempts, a record that was kept by, I guess, by their beat reporters, of how many attempts he went without throwing an interception. And the previous year, he was very sloppy. He only had like 100 passes or something like that intercepted. But the year before, he had 157 straight, passes without an interception. That doesn't necessarily mean completions. It just means the ball could drop out of somebody's hands, or somebody could, drop the interception. But it's basically meaning he's not putting the ball in harm's way, is what it's saying. And this year, he's kind of doing the same thing. And that has worked for the Eagles. I think he's healthy. Last year, he was banged up in his lower body, so that didn't help him. And now Kellen Moore, they said Kellen Moore is really opening this offense up for him, kind of giving him more reads. And those are the type of things we don't want to look at practice as the litany. Obviously, if it's practice, it's practice. But at the same time, to throw that many passes without interception is good in terms of for the psyche of the Eagles. It means a guy might be back to his old self and keeping the ball out of harm's way. On defense, I wouldn't say they're having issues. Some guys are flashing. Jordan Davis. They have Nakobe Dean who's making plays. They really do love their cornerbacks. They love. They're really trying to make Bryce Huff an every down player. So they got some stuff going on with the Eagles that they're doing well. They're having some good practices. Saquon Barkley's fitting in. He's assimilating right there. They're showing him all over the field. This guy is going to be utilized everywhere, apparently, and it's just going to help out their whole team. So those are some of the things. Oh, and by the way, Mekhi Becton is looking somewhat good on the offensive line. So this is what happens, right? They cast away a guy in New York with the Jets. They stinks. They move him in to guard and have a good O-line coach, and now he's responding, and who knows? I don't know if he will, but you put him in the Jeff Stoutland system, and offensive linemen are churned out like butter. So whether or not he makes the team or if he's a starter, there's rumors out there that he's slowly developing into a decent guard out there for them. So they've got a lot going on. Defensively, like I said, Vic Fangio, I don't know how it's going to play out with him because in the media, I wouldn't say he kind of throws people into the bus, but he kind of points out like, oh, this guy's not doing that well. He's going to get there, but he's not doing that well right now. So I don't know if that's going to rub people the wrong way. His delivery is like, I think what he's trying to do is not give these guys a big head about them. I don't know if he's, I don't know what he's saying in the locker room and then going out. I don't have that information. I can just talk about what I'm hearing and seeing. And what it looks like. There are certain players he kind of like, well, Bryce Huff can do everything we ask him. And then there's other players where he's kind of like, well, we need Nakobe Dean to step up. He's had a couple of good days of practice, and then yesterday he had a bad day. Today he'll be good. So, again, there's a lot to watch there, a lot of moving parts. Again, I feel the Eagles are going to be a pretty good team. If I were an Eagle fan, who I'd be looking out for this week is obviously the first-round pick, the cornerback. Their other cornerback is injured, Cooper DeJean, so you may not see him. Look at Nakobe Dean, right? See if Jordan Davis plays because he needs the reps. You may not see Jalen Carter because, by the way, if we're talking about Dexter Lawrence being a beast, all I hear out of Eagles camp is Jalen Carter is an absolute stud. An absolute stud. So, of course, we have Kyle Van Routen who's playing center. I can't wait to play these guys when you have a guy like Jalen Carter on the other side of the football as well. So, they're doing some things over there. We'll find out. Again, preseason, you're going to get to see. You probably won't see Jalen Hurst. From what I'm hearing, they're not going to play Jalen Hurst much, which, again, Mac and I already gave our take on that. The Ravens probably not going to play Lamar Jackson, so you're probably going to get their backups. But this will be a good test of two good teams whose backups. These are what this is the team that if you're the Giants, and it was funny they had a guy. I hate to refer back to the Giants, but the Giants had like a player personnel guy on the side of the Lions in their DB kind of huddle. So don't be surprised if you know the Giants are watching this game on Friday and try and circle cornerbacks on the list, guys who may or may not be making the roster because they have a deep roster of cornerbacks and things like that. So look at the Ravens as well. Those teams are good. They have a lot of depth. That's why those teams are always good. That's why they can ship guys out and bring guys in, and they don't miss a beat because of how they're structured. So, not much is going to go on Eagle Camp in that regard. They might play Dallas Goddard a little bit. I don't think you'll see Barkley much. I think he might get a play or two here and there, but I think you won't see the big core three. So,
No, I mean, from what I've seen, he's gotten some work. I mean,
you
a good
got
amount of work, a lot of one-on-one drills, some team drills. He's been out there quite a bit.
what's concerning to me though is
No
Brian
mess.
Burns' injury. That's all. I will say monitor that.
Is
But
it?
like we said, Brian Burns kind of has his ankle that's kind of nagging him, so something that to monitor as you go through the year. But getting back to the Eagles again, this is a test. The Eagles are on a different playing field than the Giants. They're not here to need reps. They were a good team last year, even though they struggled down the stretch. They still have their core guys. They know what they're doing. Their mission is to try to get
Well,
to the Super Bowl.
just
So,
if I can cut in just real quick. So, like you said, I mean, they're a team. But the thing about the situation with them, with them is they're a good team that's had a lot of change this off season. I mean, a whole new offense coming, Kellen Moore bringing in a whole new offense, and you got some new pieces like the addition of Barkley offensively. So they do need the reps in a sense to get that continuity and gel. I mean, they even had some changes up front on the O line, which is still going to probably be an impressive group. But they've had some changes up there too. I mean, excuse me, Jay Kelsey. That's a big hit to that O line. No matter who they're putting out there. I mean, at the end of the day, Jason Kelsey was one of the best throughout basically his entire career at that position. So, I mean, I think this team, as good as they are, they do need to get a little some work in just to build that continuity up. Maybe not necessarily in this first game against Baltimore, but they need to get some work in during this
well,
preseason, I believe, just because they've had a lot of change.
I want to tend to agree with you, but again, they've been pretty crisp at practice, so they might just say, you know what, he's getting the offense down. We don't need to do that. Again, they're on a different trajectory. I agree with everything you said there, but they might be like, you know what, we're a Super Bowl team. We're not worried about this. The Giants, on the other hand, were a bad team and have more to gain by playing than the Eagles per se. But there's one thing I want to bring up before we move on to another team is this is what Jalen Hurts did, and some people are mad about it. Not me. And that is he called Wink Martindale after the season, the ex-Giant defensive coordinator, to find out how he was being defended and how teams were playing him, or just to get some insight on what they might have done. And it's not like they're going to tell any trade secrets on the defense now. It's going to be a totally different defense now. But what I think it lends to be is, one, you don't really hear that much publicly being spilled. I'm sure because it's the Eagles, it got leaked even more because the Eagles Giants rivalry, which has been going on all offseason. But it's kind of interesting to see that a guy would do that, because that's something that some people have arrogance, like, okay, I just need to get healthy and this will happen, to go out and try to seek extra advice. Well, I do hate the Eagles myself, and of course, it doesn't sound like because I'm making content. People, that's you have to have a different kind of way of thinking. You can't just be with the heart all the time. But it was intriguing to me that this happened, because I've never heard. I'm sure it happens around the league. Guys do that with ex players and things like that. But you want to hear more of it, because it makes you seem like, what trade secrets could Wink Martindale give him? What advice is he saying to him? What does he think? Because Wink Martindale has the pulse of the NFC. He's played him 4 times out of the last 2 years. it's well, they were turnover machines. Has nothing to do with anything. Has nothing to do with why Jalen Hurts calls them, right? And Jalen Hurts is calling to get advice on how he was defensive, what the game plan might have been, things of that nature. It's not necessarily, hey, what is the Giants doing this year defensively? What it's basically doing is kind of giving advice to say, okay, maybe you run here, or just to get kind of figure out what his weaknesses might have been from the opponent's viewpoints or his strengths. And I just thought it was interesting to do it. I know people are mad, like you can't get mad for somebody trying to be better. I go to a career coach, right? And I call him up with advice when I need it, when things are, not going my way, or I need a thought. And he's a guy that, you talk to your peers and everything like that. He's a guy that you might be able to turn to get advice that's a little different, right? So Wink Martindale, who is coached against him, might give him some tidbits he might not have known, right? So that was just something that I thought was interesting to think about with what Jalen Hurts did. Does that mean it's going to make him any better? I don't know. I just thought it was an interesting tidbit that people are in an uproar about. Oh, screw Wink Martindale. I'm a Giant fan. That's why he's an asshole. Like, who cares? He's on Michigan now. Like, get over it. You don't think there's trade secrets being given to them by Saquon Barkley? I mean, Saquon Barkley is more valuable to the defense than Jalen Hurts calling up Wink Martindale. You know what I mean? I mean, you can go to Saquon and be like, yo, what's Daniel Jones allergic to or whatever, and spray him with that. Oh, he doesn't like garlic, he doesn't like mango, blah blah blah, whatever. Like you can get more trade secrets that way than him trying to better himself with Wink Martindale. So I thought that was kind of interesting for the Eagles. So that's all my Eagle information right now. Just want to throw that out there.
I mean, Friday night, get a matchup like this in the preseason. I mean, maybe. Perhaps
see Kenny Pickett.
I mean, if it was, it'll be cool. I mean, it's just two of the better teams in the league. This is a potential Super Bowl matchup there. I say,
wow.
I mean, these are two really good football.
Well, they play each other this year.
The Eagles, yes, they also do play each other in the regular season. Would you be shocked to see the Eagles and the Ravens in Super Bowl at the end of the season? I doubt it. You know what I mean? No one would be stunned by that. I mean, that wouldn't surprise anyone. Both of these teams are in the mix. They're in the conversations. But let's move about. I guess we can move it along to Washington a little bit. Jaden Daniels. They released their unofficial. Jaden Daniels has been listed as their starting quarterback on their first unofficial depth chart. Doesn't mean a whole lot, but I think we can see where the story's going, man. With Jaden Daniels, we don't know how much work he's going to get this on Saturday night against the Jets, but I would like to see him go out there and get a series or two, man. Get a series or two in, just get wet in NFL against a good defense, by the way, in the New York Jets.
I agree with you. I think this is a perfect test to go out and try him out. It doesn't. If you see things are going terribly wrong, right? He's getting sacked, or the defense, your offensive line getting overwhelmed. Then you're the coach. You have to pull him out and say, okay, maybe we'll do that. But if he's got a drive going or something like that, like you said, this is a good defense. Why not let him get his first taste? He's going to have to get hit sometime. Okay, you can't put guys in bubble wrap. I'm sorry. Okay, go out there with your starting unit and coach them up and say, listen, this is a preseason game. We're going to go starters first, prepare that you're starting. Because what happens is this, and this is why I talk about practice and things like that. You have a different mindset when it's practice. You have a different mindset when it's a preseason game. You have a different mindset when it's a regular season game, right? And the only way you're going to kind of get the mindset for this young guy is to treat it as if it's a regular season game. And so we're going to pull you when we pull you, right? And it will be good to see him in a setting, because you got to see him under center. The ball's got to get snap. All the little things that you're looking for are what you need, right? You see them all the time in practice, but then the game, it's different, right? The defense knows the snap count in practice. They can go easy. The play is blown dead a lot quicker. But this This is different. You have guys bearing down on you. They're trying to make the team. There's obviously going to be a vanilla defense, but still you have to play out your individual matches, and it'll be good to see what happens. Because remember, they played Daniel Jones all preseason, his first season, right? Throwing the ball all over the yard, and I think it truly helped him coming out the gate when he played, because even though he didn't play those first 2 weeks, he didn't need to I need to warm up and do that. He already had some playing time under his belt. So I think that's what you should do with Jaden Daniels. I think you should play him this week and let him roll and let him get that lather. I mean, I know we saw the last week, I know they're doing Hard Knocks to the Bears, and you didn't see Caleb Williams. I thought that was a move that shouldn't have happened, but again, they're playing 4 preseason games as opposed to 3. So everybody has a different approach. I think young guys need to play because it's, again, a different ball game. People think preseason's easy. It's not easy for some of the players who are on the bubble, right? The guys who actually have to go out and show out. And if you make preseason more meaningful, you'll get more meaningful football, right? And it will be less nonchalant. So, I think he needs those reps. And if I'm Washington, I'm giving him as many as I can these next 3 games going into it, because if you declare him your starter, right, he's going to need those reps, and he's going to need them against live bullets, against a guy who's coming over trying to make the team, right? That guy's going to try to strip sack you, right? It's not going to the whistle doesn't blow dead in the preseason where you don't get to hit the quarterback, right? You got to get the quarterback. So again, I know I'm rambling. I believe you should play him. I believe he will play.
I will say in Chicago's defense, though, with the Caleb, I probably would have sat Caleb Williams out in the whole game, just speaking from, I've been down on that field before. I know that field is not exactly, it's not the greatest condition. Weather was shitty that night out there.
Oh yes,
and
I agree with you.
It's just a lot of different things. So it's like I think I'm okay with them sitting him out of that game, but I would like to see him out there this week as well, like you just said, for sure, getting those reps. And I hope Commanders give Jaden Daniels some work as well, because I think these rookies, they got to go out there. They got to, like we were saying when we were talking about the Giants earlier, you got to get these guys, got to get just to the true speed of the game. And even though it's still just preseason and you're still not going to you're not going to get everybody's best shot necessarily, you're going to at least be able to have a true understanding of just how faster the NFL is than the college in which you just came from. I mean, so they need these guys that work. Rafael, man, El Capitan in the building, man.
How are you,
bro? Appreciate you. But yeah. So like I said, Washington also, like we were talking about when I was talking about the Eagles as well. They've another team this offseason. A lot of change, a lot of new things going on with this team, bringing in Austin Eckler and Zach Ertz and a lot of things they're doing, a lot of change on their offensive line and whatnot. This is another team like where with much different change. They're not a team that can really just sit back and or to just waste away the preseason. They need to get their guys all the work they can possibly give them, within reason, obviously. And try to get this thing and try to this thing. And I think they're just headed in a good direction. But they go out there and they got to get this work. They got to get these guys some work, and they got to have these guys ready and prepare them. And I said, I just don't understand the mentality of the teams these days. Like I said, this like arrogance about preseason anymore. It's just ridiculous to me. You got to. This is exactly what's like we already just mentioned. Not to go back down this rabbit hole again, but this is what's wrong with the fucking game. Straight up, this is what's really just. These are the things like this, man. You got these guys just. They're going into the regular season, and it takes the first month of the season before we can start seeing some consistently decent football, man. I'm tired of waiting that long for. I want these guys coming into week one ready to go because
and that could derail your season.
Themselves in the preseason, yeah. It just
so for let's say you're the Commanders, right? You don't play Jaden Daniels. You start him game one. Now he doesn't know anything from his ass from hole in the wall, right? And you lose those 2 games. As opposed to playing it, he understands your dialogue a little bit. He understands the play call that's being called. Is that a game plan? No, obviously the other team is not really blitzing you. They're not really strategizing the same way. But the functionalities of getting the team out of the huddle, getting under center, getting a feel for what the game is, the referee blowing, the crowd kind of, in a different mode, It's fun, but at the same time, it's football. It basically, you're doing this for all the procedures. And by the way, because you've condensed practice and don't hit as much in practice, and you don't have as many practices to get on, to me as a coach, the more reps that I can get in with my team, the advantage I have, because I should be further along in the process than waiting till week one and hoping that everything goes right. When instead you get to week one, and since your guys played for all 3 preseason games, you then all of a sudden bang, come week one, it's not as foreign to me, right? So that's why I believe you need to play, especially since you're condensing time. So anybody with a rookie quarterback that's starting that you think is going to start him. And that goes the same way where you have a rookie quarterback that's not starting. You start your guy. Let's say, for example, Atlanta, right? You start your guy. He goes in. You get Kirk Cousins out after a drive. Then you can use Michael Penix, right? That's a different scenario. You want those reps because you already have a starter. If you're starting your quarterback, you also want those reps because you just want him to be the guy commanding the huddle with the starters, right? With the guys that he's going to be playing with. So there's many different ways to use the preseason, but I still believe you need to play the preseason. And, we wouldn't have got guys like Victor Cruz, Wayne Corbett, John Randall, things like that without preseason games. So I know people don't like them, but with the way the NFL is going this year and how they do things, it really is. You really are going to see sloppier football going forward, and guys are going to be less developed.
Absolutely, man. But Sunday night, man, we can go out to LA, and they got the Los Angeles Rams hosting the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, not Sunday night, but Sunday afternoon, whatever. Sunday.
Okay.
Anyway, nonetheless, a lot still going. A lot still going on over in Cowboy camp. Still a wide receiver who is yet to report because he is still yet to get that bag that he is so desperately searching for. And what else going on over in Cowboy camp, Adam?
Well, I mean, they're moving on business as usual. I mean, they have talks. It's not like there's not open communication. I think it should get done by the beginning of the season. I think all 3 guys at some point are going to be signed, because I think that's how the Cowboys are rolling. Obviously, you notice they didn't sign many free agents this year. That could be because they believe in their guys, so they're going to try to re-sign them. So I think, he's holding out. He's doing everything that you normally would do. He's not slandering the team. He's not doing anything. This is a real holdout, Saquon. This is what you do if you want leverage, right? And I don't blame him, right? If you look at Hard Knocks, it's kind of funny. They pulled off DJ Moore on the field and signed him right then and there, and they went back, and everybody knows. So everyone knows what's going on. Everybody knows why he's not there, or if he is there, why he's not practicing, So it's a business. And at the end of the day, the Cowboys are still moving along. They're still looking good in practice. Mike Zimmer's got that defense humming. Okay, they're trying to get a couple guys get better. That offense is still moving around and shaking. Dak Prescott is in midseason form. You remember they got Trayvon Diggs back now, right? So they got their cornerback back. They lost Sam Williams. They're probably going to get somebody at some point in the cut downs when things get cut down, because a lot of these good teams will be doing that. If I'm the Cowboys, I'm probably going to see how that shakes out. And, right now they're going to LA. What you want to look at if you're a Cowboy fan is Mozzie Smith. I don't know if he's going to play, but they've had some ups and downs with Mozzie Smith. He had some good days and some bad days, and apparently last year he was not utilized correctly. And Mike Zimmer is like, well, I'm going to change that up now. So, they're trying to rely on him. So he might get a lot of burn this week. Obviously, Micah Parsons under the same contract thing. I think he's been practicing though. But he does want a contract extension, but I think he's also in year 3 or something like that. So technically he's the same. He's a year behind Kayvon Thibodeau, so he's going into year 4. So he has a 5th-year option. So there's some time with Micah Parsons. Obviously, they're going to probably pay him, but that's what people need to know. He's probably going to do that. So he loves the defense. He loves being moved around. So I think I think we're a lot of people saying, oh, they're sleeping on the Giants or they're sleeping on this team or the Cowboys haven't done anything. I think what we need to do is re-look at that Cowboy team because not that they didn't do anything, it's that their players are good enough for them to get there. They won 12 games last year, and that core is probably still there, right? With a couple add-ons in terms of the receiving core. Tolbert stepping up, and they got their tight ends back now. And Dallas Goedert, not assuming that Dallas Goedert, they have not Schultz. Ferguson is still doing well, right? And they still got guys out there that can make plays. So whenever CeeDee Lamb does decide to show up, they'll be there. And I don't think you're going to see Dak Prescott this week. I think you're going to see a lot of Trey Lance. How do we know their running game is going to be trash? How do we know? How do we know? They didn't even need to run the football last year. They were a predominantly passing team. I mean, I don't know, man. We don't know how they're doing. They're running back by committee right now. They have a decent offensive line. They were a decent run team last year. I would assume with the same offensive line come back, they're probably going to be a decent decent run team. So we'll see how that goes. That's something that Micah Parsons needs to get over. And I think with Mike Zimmer, he might actually unlock him because if you watch what Dan Quinn did, Micah used to come out of the game sometimes. You're asking yourself, why? Why are you out of the game? It's third and whatever, and you're out of the game. And now he's being utilized slightly different than he normally was used last time. So that might help eliminate them. So, it is what it is. We'll see how they do. Again, they bring back Zeke Elliott. He's not great. They have a couple other running backs on the roster that they have. They're probably going to be a predominantly pass heavy team, and rely on Dak Prescott's right arm to get him there and use the run game to kind of, get the down and distance short. But we'll see what happens. I'm not going to declare anything, especially as a Giant fan, and tell people, well, their run game is going to be trash because they've been a solid run team for the past few years, right? So I'm not – when you have an offensive line that good, you don't need great running backs. You just need a guy who can make plays. And who knows? Maybe they have something to Deuce Vaughn. We'll find out. He'll get some playing time. So, the Cowboys, again, a different situation. Not the same as the Giants. Again, they're looking at Mozzie Smith. Let's get their roster out for you so maybe we can get some guys in front that you might want to look at as a fan, because obviously the Rams aren't playing anybody. Puka Nacua is injured, so Matthew Stafford.
Talk about their running back situation. Brought up Deuce Vaughn already. Obviously Zeke Elliott, who's not the same guy used to be, but he's still more than serviceable in those short yardage situations for sure. And and then there's another guy that made some noise for this Cowboys offense last year. I don't know if a lot of people pay much attention, man. That kid Rico Dowdle.
Yes,
he's another guy that's also in the mix. Definitely be part of whatever kind of a committee. And this kid was showing me some serious flashes a season ago, making some really nice plays in this Cowboy offense. When they really went more to that committee, to the more of the style, when they really realized that Tony Pollard wasn't a bell cow. So I think, I'm kind of Adam here. No mess, man. I wouldn't want to sleep on the Cowboys running back early to run the football right now because they got guys that can do a little bit of damage, man. Collectively, maybe no one individual that's going to stand out and jump off the page at you, but you got some guys that collectively can probably make it happen, and I wouldn't totally sleep on a bunch.
Yeah, I mean they have. You said Roos Darling. They have Royce Freeman, okay, Rico Dowling, and Zeke Elliott, and they have a fullback at Hunter Lupique, right, and Deuce Vaughn. So they're probably, they're going to have a lead back coming out there and a fullback. One of the only teams that's carrying a fullback on the roster right now. So, and all the backs do many different things. Malik Davis is not bad as well. He got some burn last year. Deuce Vaughn had a little bit of burn as well. So, I'm not saying these guys are bell cows, but everybody does it differently nowadays. And you'll probably utilize them in different ways, right? It's going to be about pass pro. If these guys can pass block, then they'll be on the field. Again, like I said, you're not gonna see much from the Cowboys, but you might see like a Justin Rogers, you might see a Byron Vaughns, right? A Brock Mogeson, right? A Maris Latufu who needs some playing time. He's a rookie, right? You're probably not going to see Eric Kendricks that much. So you'll see a lot of their backups, and again, they're ahead of the game. They're allowed to do that. You're probably not going to see Donovan Wilson, but you might see a Natasha Wright or a Josh Butler, right? You're not going to see Deron Bland. So these are some of the players that they might have, right? I doubt they have Malik Hooker, but maybe they play him coming back, right? CJ Goodwin will play. Yeah, he's a special teams guy. The Cowboys, believe it or not, have a solid roster. So that's why you didn't see them make many moves, right? There's not a plethora of free agents that they brought in, because they have a lot of guys that they've drafted who they brought up in the system who are now going to take prominent roles. And that's, where that's where they'll kind of hang their hats on. So the Cowboys, again, probably are going to do what the Rams are doing. Just going to play guys to be a glorified scrimmage. And then you'll start to probably see them in the next preseason game. And then you kind of got to wait and see. Everything's a wait and see approach with this, right? Because you got to see who gets injured, who gets traded, what moves are being made. But I'm not going to doubt the Cowboys. Okay, we win 12 games and win the division last year. They're the champs for a reason. Okay, so we can laugh and say, oh, they're going to be trash or they're going to be this, but the last 2 years they've won 24 games where we've won like 13, like 14, something like that, right? Eagles last 3 years have won like 30 something games, where we have won like not even 20 when you put it together in the last 3 seasons. So, it's not something, we went 4-13 1 year. We won 6 games, we're 10, so 19 games in the last 3 years we've won, right? And in the last 3 years, these teams have been dominant, right, in terms of winning. So when someone says, oh, their backs are trash or anything like that, let's be real. These teams have good offensive lines. You and I can run behind them if we need to. They just need to be effective. That's all. And again, we don't know who they're going to trade for, who's going to fall off. What if we cut Turbo for some reason? And they're like, you know what? We like Turbo. And all of a sudden now he's a 1,000-yard back. You never know what's going to happen. So, but that's all I got with the Cowboys. It's preseason.
Yeah.
Enjoy it.
This Cowboy team how we've been talking about, how important it is for these, guys to get out there and play. This is actually a kind of team, just the way they're made up, that, yeah, maybe this is the type of team that can afford to probably rest their players a little bit in the preseason and give them that break a little bit in the preseason, because of just they do know the makeup of their team. They're not looking for their identity, so to speak.
Right.
This team knows exactly what it is. And like you said, the lack of moves they made throughout the offseason, it's pretty much rolling out pretty much the same team they had a year ago. So this is, we'll see how the Cowboys approach the things. But, yeah, it definitely is a team that they're usually very effective in the regular season at the very least. No matter how you feel about how you like them, don't like them, whatever.
Well, I think they're putting on their finishing
touches. They get it done.
Like if you think about a cake, right? And the cake is frosted, right? And it's a beautiful cake. Right now, you're just putting on those little like squiggly things at the top of the cake, right? The little extra accents, as you will. That's what the Cowboys are looking for. They're looking for the accent players that they may not necessarily use, but they can keep and develop in their system because they've drafted them and they've put resources in, right? Unlike the Giants and like the Commanders, who are filled with a lot of veterans who are older and kind of holding spots for guys who hope to get there, right? So that's kind of the difference, and that's why they can come back with their entire roster from last year almost, and basically tell you this is how we're going to roll it out, right? And they believe in their quarterback and their receivers and their offense because let's be honest, they won 12 games last year. They had a pretty hard schedule and they still won some. Did they beat every big team? No, they had some teams there, but again, they got to the dance, they won the game, and they believe that their defense is now a little bit better with a different coach and a different style. So, something to look into going forward, and we'll see what happens. Again, I know my seat at the table. I know a lot of people don't like that. I know a lot of people don't. They want to see me wear my heart on my sleeve more during this time on these streams, and I have to be honest with you. I have to be myself in terms of a content creator and give you what is out there, and not by my heart. You know. So, but anyways,
No doubt indeed. No doubt indeed, man. Thank you too though for stopping in, man. Much love, much appreciation, man. Thanks for stopping by, man. Always a pleasure, man. But we are definitely getting ready to wrap things up this week. Once again for another edition. This has been a full edition of the Real Deal NFC's round. Before we go though, I've been in the last few shows just bringing, like I said, 100 New York Giants. More names got dropped this week once again. List going down from 50 to 41. Some big names once again on in this group of 10. Some big names. Let's talk about it a little bit, man. Yeah, let's start with the guy that caught the game and touchdown pass in Super Bowl 42. Plaxico Burress dropping
wow,
in this week onto the countdown, man. Let's talk about Jeremy Shockey dropping in on the countdown this week. Amongst this group, Sean Landetta. Back your guys can go, but Sean Landetta, the punter of the New York Giants, back in the championship years in the 80s and in the early 90s, man. He was still in there a little bit in the early 90s, man. Sean Landetta, one of the greatest punters, if not maybe the greatest punter in New York Giant history, man. And there's and also another big name on the list, Bart Oates, man. Another guy dropping in on the list this week, man. Bart Oates was one center for the New York Giants back in the 80s. Bart Oates was that guy, man. I don't know. Like I said, I'm an older guy. I remember watching Bart Oates out there. I mean, he was how I was just talking about like Jason Kelsey. He was our Jason Kelsey back then. He was that guy that you could rely on in the center position that was going to always have everybody else doing the right thing
who is
on the
this?
same page, man. Bart Oates, man, he was a center back in like the 80s
Oh
during
yeah, I know
the
who he
first
is.
Super Bowl, first two Super Bowls. Yeah, Bart Oates. But so yeah, just some big names. Like those are some amongst some of the big names for me in this group of 10, man. Like I said, taking the list down from 50 to 41. So we're getting close, man. We're getting close. We're
Plaxico
getting down
Burress,
to the
interesting.
wire now, man. Still, I thought Plaxico Burress would have been even a little bit higher, honestly, on this list, man. I thought he would have been a little bit further
Yeah.
up, a little bit up, a little bit more. He did what he did for his time here with the New York Giants was absolutely incredible. I thought Shockey potentially could have been
Well,
a
shocking,
little higher
yes.
as well. Honestly,
I'm
I thought
not.
he could have been a little higher as well. But like they always start when they show the episodes online, they start off at least one. They always let you know, remind you. There's been like over 5,000 players that have put on a New York Giant uniform since 1925, man, and it's a lot to get narrowed down just to your top 100. So I mean, a lot of these guys meant so much to us, as you know, household names for us Giant fans, man. But there are a lot of other great Giants even back there. Like there was a guy on this list this past week too that was played in the 1930s. You know what I mean? I have no idea who that person was. But at the end of the day, it's guys like that. There was a guy on the list a few weeks back. He was played. He was on the inaugural New York Giant team. Like he was a guy that was on the team in the inaugural season for the New York Giants. So it's like I said, it's a lot of it's hard to compile a list like that, man. It's hard to come break it all down, but
Plaxico Burress,
I've been
interesting.
enjoying it thus far, man. I've definitely been enjoying it thus far, man. I mean, and by my calculations, it's probably only going to be two or three more receivers to get revealed. Odell Beckham still has not. I don't think he hasn't been revealed yet on there. Amani Toomer has not been revealed on here yet. And there's another guy back in like the 70s or something. I think that was also like a Hall of Famer for the Giants. That's probably going to be on the list at some point too. I can't remember his name offhand right now, but yeah, it's like it's still obviously some obvious big names still that we know. Like we know who number one's going to be. I mean, they can make this as suspenseful as they want to. We all know who number one is going to be. Like that, that's a foregone conclusion. But it's going to be fun to see where Eli does get slotted in at. It's going to be fun to see Phil Simms is yet to be revealed on this list yet. So it's going to,
So what numbers did they go to?
Mark Bavaro. Right
So
now we're down to 41, 50 to 41.
That's what they did. So they did. You did Ray Flattery, Spider Lockhart. He'll be in the Hall of Fame. So the guys that I know from this list by that were part of my childhood are, I don't really know Bart Oates that well, but if you know history and the history of the Giants, Bart Oates is a guy that you should know. He was on those teams. He's the guy climbing out of the stands in 1986. So you see that highlight all over the place. I think he also played for the 49ers at one point, so there was a rivalry there. But the four guys I want to talk about is I'll talk about Lindetta. I know Lindetta from mostly his Eagle days. I remember that he played for the Giants, but when I grew up in the early 90s, late 90s, he kind of played for the Eagles. He always had that little one-bar face mask. That was kind of annoying, but he did play for them for a while. And you're like, what are you doing, bro? But, punters at that time, and they still some of them do, they play until they're like 50, right? So he just kept going, and like Jeff Eagles played until God knows how long. My God, a punter, a good punter can make a great defense better, that much better. People don't realize, we have a good punter, and he can pin guys inside the 10. You make guys like Brian Burns' job even that much easier because now quarterbacks have to be scared, right? Because of things they did, right? So, but look at they're showing Sean Lindetta as we speak, 2-time champion, three-time All-Pro, 2-time Pro Bowler. He's played in all 80s team, all decade teams, so he probably should be in the Hall of Fame, Sean Lindetta. Jeremy Shockey, well, let me get into Rodney Hampton because the last two guys I want to speak about. Rodney Hampton.
Oh, how did I forget Rodney Hampton? Yeah, Rodney Hampton. I'm sorry. I did forget he was on this group too. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Rodney Hampton, my first running back that I came encounter with the Giants, 1995. That's when I kind of started to follow the draft, not like heavily, but I understood what the draft was. For some reason I knew about it. They drafted in 1995 Michigan running back Tyrone Wheatley to kind of replace or be a bell cow with Rodney Hampton, but Rodney Hampton would not relinquish that job. And he ran all over people. He got 1,000 yards that season. Again, he played in 1996, again with a young Tyrone Wheatley. He was in that season in 1996, another 1,000 yards. 1997, he had an injury, and he was never the same then. He was coming back from a knee injury. I think that he got sustained late in 1996 or some type of cleanup that didn't happen. But he never was the same after that. But he left prior to Tiki Barber as the all-time leading rusher. And 27, that's why when Brandon Jacobs wears 27, I always remember a little homage to Rodney Hampton because when Rodney Hampton broke his leg, like when he came out, he was a fast back, but he kind of broke his leg, and then became this power back that he would carry guys, and run them over. That's what Rodney Hampton was. And I loved him. I wish, he got a Super Bowl, which I'm glad he did because he's a guy that if you were to look back, like, man, I hope he won a championship. He did. So Rodney Hampton, I wanted to say, and I met him. I have a picture with Rodney Hampton at the game. So Rodney Hampton holds a little place in my heart because he was the first running back that I knew about and the first productive running back that I talked about. He was really a big part of the 90s for me. The next guy I want to talk about is Jeremy Shockey. Again, a guy that, at the time it was him and Jason Witten kind of, you weren't talking about tight ends the same way. You had your Ben Coates, your Shannon Sharps, your Tony Gonzalez was in the league. But this is where this is where you got to see Jeremy Shockey and the maniac that he was, right? Remember his first game against the Texans? He runs a guy over. He ran a guy. He had his helmet ripped off in a game and still kept running, and then used his shoulders to hit a guy, right? The guy was the guy where you were like, man, that's a crazy nut job I want on my side. Now he became an asshole and kind of, ruined Eli Manning a little bit because of the pressure they put on Eli Manning. But he was fun to watch, man. And again, at the time when the Giants had nobody on offense that was worth a damn, right? Not a person. I mean, Amani Toomer was okay, but he was only okay because of fucking Kerry Collins. But we had no tight end to go with Amani Toomer. Well, when you put Jeremy Shockey, Ike Hilliard, and Amani Toomer on the field, that offense was humming, man. They were doing some big things, and he won Rookie of the Year that year. And Jeremy Shockey, and never forget him. He was a great tight end, even though he's a jerk. And then there's Plaxico Burress, who, while I don't think necessarily I put him on this list only because he was a big free agent acquisition, and he'll always be in Giant lore. Where Lendetta, Hampton, and Shockey, I do believe, were all drafted by the Giants, so they kind of have a different feel when they're on this list. Plaxico Burress was a gun for hire from the Pittsburgh Steelers, who, if you knew anything about him, the first indoctrination I got with Plaxico was, I'll never forget him spiking the ball after a catch, not realizing that you're not down in the NFL, and it ended up being a football folly because he spiked the ball, and then the other team got it and started running with it, and he didn't realize it. But when he came over, it was the New York Giants telling you, we got our quarterback in Eli Manning. We're going to bring him over as alpha dog. And just like what they're hoping happens right now, Plaxico Burress saved Eli Manning's ass a couple times. Don't get me wrong, Eli had talent. But when you have a guy who's 6'5" and can do a lot of the things that Plaxico Burress did, we hadn't seen a guy like that. And at the time, the Giants offense needed a player like that. They didn't need an Odell Beckham. They needed a big-time receiver in Plaxico Burress. And he kind of changed the trajectory of it and, helped out the quarterback. But again, as you saw, Plaxico Burress doesn't do Eli Manning also makes Plaxico Burress as well. If Eli Manning and Plaxico Burress don't get together, I don't think you see the same trajectory that Plaxico Burress had, right? If he doesn't play for New York, he's not the same guy. In New York, Eli Manning made Plaxico Burress an absolute star, right? Did he bail him out in times where he was like, where he knew Plaxico was going to get the ball, made Eli a little bit more, of a gunslinger? Yes, but Eli had that talent coming out. So I really wish he didn't shoot himself in the leg in 2008, because I would have loved to have seen him play that game against the Eagles. If you guys remember, after he shot himself in the leg, they had Dominic Hickson, and the offense just kind of lost its alpha, right, in terms of a player that.
All I can remember is Dominic Hickson. Eli throwing the most perfect pass.
Oh my God,
that damn game against the Eagles, and he just dropped it, bro. Wide open. All he had to do was catch the ball, and he could have walked into the end zone.
Oh my God, he could have waltzed.
He dropped it, bro.
And that, to me,
all he had to do was catch the football.
And that was against the Eagles, not in the playoff game. That was regular season, I think. I do believe. I think.
No, that was the playoff game. That was the playoff game.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, we had the first round bye. Remember, it was the divisional round.
That would have won them the football game, because had he not dropped that, and it was a beautiful play. You could have not designed a guy more open. I mean, and you're looking at it, and you're like, Eli throws, like you said, a bomb. And I remember, unfortunately, I was at that game. I was at that game because I worked with the Giants that year, and let me tell you, it was. And then, I don't know if the play stopped them from scoring, but it was. I think they eventually went down and got closer and closer. But that would have been a game-changing moment in the play. But then they went down, and Plaxico Burress in the red zone was a menace to the Eagles, right? Because he would box them out. And Eli Manning throws a pick in the end zone in basically the last play of the game or so, or last drive of the game, in desperation to, again, Dominic Hickson, who is not the same player that Plaxico Burress was. And the impact was really felt in that game when you kind of needed, you needed that Eli magic to happen. And while the Eli magic was there, he overcame some of it. Sometimes a player you trust, like a Plaxico, does a little bit more, and you can't do certain things. Like Malik Neighbors, he's going to be a good player, a really good player. And hopefully he stays long enough to break some of these records that we talk about with Amani Toomer and Plaxico Burress and all that. But it says something to be a guy who can bail your quarterback out sometimes, right? And that'll help your guys out. Now, your quarterback's still got to be good on the other end. If you look at Jimmy Garoppolo, he had Devontae Adams and still sucked, right? So I'm not saying that's a cure-all. But with Plaxico Burress, he obviously, helped out Eli. And then the catch, the sluggo route in the Super Bowl. Like he's borderline Hall of Fame to me. The years he played with the Giants, he played like a Hall of Famer. And so he deserves all the accolades he gets. I think I'm kind of just stunned not because of what he is, because of the impact he had in the Giants, but where he came from, right? We got him for 3 years. He was off the team after basically 2008 with the tumultuous thing. Did he play long enough to be in the Giants? And then I guess, he made the impact with the Super Bowl and he was brought in here to do what he did. So, yeah, he does have that impact. So, sorry for the long-winded thing, but.
It's just about the impact he had while he was here. I agree. Talk about that 2018, Giants were the best team in the league the entire season. That happened at the point in the season in which that happened. It was just kind of too hard to really do anything about it. You had to kind of just go forward with the guys you had. Unfortunately, it just wasn't quite good enough. The New York Giants finished that season strong. They had that big game in Carolina at the end of the season. And, the big game with Brandon Jacobs and Derek Ward ran absolutely wild. What's going on? Unpopular opinion. You're talking about that year, Giants had 2,000-yard running backs that season. 2. And Brandon Jacobs and Derek Ward. And they had a Miles Bradshaw that was still also doing some positive things as well that season. So that was just a great year at New York Giants. That really, you look back, that was a year missed, man, because the New York Giants should have absolutely became back-to-back Super Bowl champs, man. They should have. That's how that story should have been written, man.
Because they beat every team.
That was a lost opportunity.
They beat every team in the playoffs that year, and that year was who I think Pittsburgh went to the Super Bowl that year, right? I'm not mistaken.
Pittsburgh won the Super Bowl that year. That's Pittsburgh, Arizona Super Bowl.
Right. So we beat both Arizona and Pittsburgh that year. The Arizona wouldn't want to play the Giants in 2008. They were going to be destroyed. Okay. And you already had beaten Pittsburgh that year, and I do believe they were the better team. They would have went in, and it was just, when we lost Plaxico, it kind of deflated us, but usually you could overcome that. But that's why Plaxico Burress deserves to be on this list, because if he's on that team, man, back to back, imagine back to back, man. That team was 12-4 and absolutely dominant in certain games. Like literally, probably in my lifetime, in my football lifetime, because in my lifetime there's been better teams, but in my football watching lifetime, that's probably the best team I've ever seen the Giants have. They were favorites in every game. They played like favorites in every game. They fucking blew teams out. Yeah. It was amazing. Yeah, you had the one blunder against.
It was fun to watch.
Where it was like, a shit show. Braylon Edwards, ran by.
Braylon Edwards just torched us. Yeah.
Right. Aaron Ross is still picking up his fucking jock from that game, right? But it was just different. The way they handled the Ravens that year, man. I was there when they handled the Ravens. Let me tell you something, man. I was there on the field, right? And the funny story about that game, the Ravens game in 2008, is we're looking at our linebacking core, who consists of Antonio Pierce, Derek Clark, not Derek Clark. I think it's Clark. Yeah, I think it was Clark is his name. I don't remember his first name. Nice guy though. And then you had Chase Blackburn. Right. Then you look over on the Ravens sideline, and you've got Ray Lewis. You've got Peter Boulware. You've got all these big dudes, and we're like, yo. Meanwhile, Antonio Pierce looked like he got a beer gut and everything like that. We're like, yo, that's a linebacking core. But anyways, the funniest part about that game is that they came in there and they had no idea. Like you could hear like Ray Lewis talking on the field, and then the collisions would happen. And I'm at the game, so I'm literally watching. When I mean at the game, when I mean on the sideline, I've never seen people hit as hard or be as big as that fucking Ravens team was. And they absolutely manhandled them on offense. They made that Raven team who had, I still think they had they didn't have Saragusa, but they had somebody big in the middle. I forget who it was, but there was somebody huge in the middle, still had Ray Lewis, still had that vaunted defense. And when I'm talking about these guys were huge, I'm talking about like probably the biggest football team I ever witnessed in real life. So, and when you have
Probably had
Brandon,
Lodi Nato was on that team, probably.
yeah, there you go. He was there. They were just and Brandon Jacobs running through Ray Lewis and shit, and just that team just being that dynamic. And Derek Ward, the Panther game, that was insane. Again, I was on that field when that happened. So it's like when you watch that shit back, and you're like, holy crap, you know. It never was. I was on the field for, like I said, I was on the field for that Eagle game. I watched Eli Manning on the sideline, throw the interception in the back of the end zone because Dominic Hickson ran the wrong route, right? So it was heartbreaking, and it was so different for us because when he shot himself, right? Antonio Pierce is gone, and he's out too. So we didn't have our core guys there. So it was crazy because when Ravens were a Super Bowl team, right? And you go through the season, and we get to that game where he shoots himself at the club, and everything goes from downhill. It was crazy to be on that sideline, and it was absolutely insane. The Bengal game that year when they went overtime, let me tell you, I've never heard a stadium so loud in my life. So loud in my life. That was the loudest game I've ever been to in my life. It just, the noise cascaded over the wall. It felt like you were getting flushed with like noise, like a cavalcade. I'm rambling on about my time just because you brought up Plaxico Burress in the 2008 season, and that was the year I got to enter. So it was crazy.
Because you said something that I never even really thought about it like that, but you're absolutely right, spot on with that. That is, I was obviously alive for the '86 season. I was a kid still, real little kid then at that point in time though, and whatnot. And that was obviously a great New York Giant football team as well. But you're right, that '08 team, man, that team should have been champions, man. It still kind of does frustrate me that team could not win that title that year, man.
The lost three
clinched the first round bye against Carolina in that final game of the season. They clinched that first round bye, number one seed in NFC.
Epic.
That bye, then go up, then get the Eagles, then get your division rival, the Eagles, which was one of the Giants' couple losses during the regular season as well. They had split with the Eagles that season,
and you had a first round bye.
That was the opportunity. Right? Yeah, you had the first round bye. You're hosting the Eagles, and get an opportunity to stick it to them, and you should have won that game. You should have won the game, but it just came up short, man. And ends that season, and in a sense, it didn't. I wouldn't say ended the run, obviously, because the Giants won Super Bowl in 2011 as well, obviously, but. That was never an opportunity for the Giants to have a little point where they were maybe even considered a dynasty. That was the opportunity. That was their small window. That was their window of opportunity right there. Man. They could have kept that team a little more intact. That Plaxico Burress situation, it really did just derail. It derailed a lot. It honestly did. It really did derail a lot. Because but here nor there,
that's
the past.
Well, look, they had Mario Manningham that year, and he couldn't quite make the roster. I remember Mario Manningham because if anyone knows me, that guy can't count down from 10. If you want to know a story, I'll share that story at training camp another time. But he wasn't really getting much burn, and so I don't know if he would have changed the game on that play if you put him in there instead of Dominic Hickson if that's a touchdown because again he had the drops, this kid, so. They needed that second receiver that year. Like they didn't have a third receiver. It was Plaxico and it was Amani and it was the tight ends, Boss, right? They didn't have a slot receiver really. There was no real Victor Cruz or anything like that. So they didn't have anybody once he went down. A guy like Hickson, he played, but he wasn't really that good, So once he shot somebody, there was no guy there that if they had on the team, like if they had kept some, I don't even I'm thinking through their roster, they had nobody. There was no guy that late in the year who could have came in and helped them, And I think that was part of the roster construction. And had they like, because Mario Manningham was drafted a second or third round, so you were expecting him to help you, and he kind of didn't. So that put the Giants in a bind because then they had to rely on like a guy they got, undrafted in Dominic Hickson. So it is one of those things of man.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I guess just real quick, we'll see what happens. I mean, basically with this Malik Neighbors situation, when Malik Neighbors is an absolute dog. I mean, everything I'm saying, this kid's an absolute
1,300 yards.
And reports just are saying that even in practices, Daniel Jones is looking comfortable just throwing the ball into tighter coverage with Malik Neighbors, at least, because Malik Neighbors has that ability to just go up and
give me the damn ball,
beat a guy. Yeah, so we'll see how that translates to the game, man. And hopefully that does translate into games come September, man. But yeah, Malik Neighbors, I think
Toomer was washed up,
looking like the Giants definitely did get a winner, man.
You better pray that he doesn't get injured, because there was a practice report where he went out, the offense kind of did nothing. So like, I'm hoping the guy is electric, and I got called crazy because I thought the guy could be rookie of the year. I thought the guy could end up getting 1,300 yards. People called me insane, and I was like, all right, well, why is that insane? And guess who's now toting that? Adam Schefter, Peter Schrager, mad people are saying the same thing I said about him possibly be a rookie of the year and possibly be at 1,300 yards. That's why I tell people, the Giants drafted win now. That's what they drafted. They drafted a win now mode. So if you don't accept anything less than playoffs, you shouldn't. Don't get fooled into our season. I don't think they're going to be that fantastic. I think they're going to win about 7 games, but in year 3, the excuses should be no more in terms of the offense. And it's more about like, let's see what he can do, because the Giants had Odell Beckham Jr. and still went 6-10. So, well, I mean, it was a practice, man. He's trusted his throws like this. He's, he hasn't always put it up for grabs like this, but we'll see in the game, man. He's got to prove it in the game. That's all. Let's see how it happens in the game. Once he gets hit. Everybody looks good in practice.
As we get, it's been rough for us this all season. But as I like I said, we're getting closer to the season, man. And the more I just keep watching Malik Neighbors, the more excited I am. And I want to see I'm excited to see this kid on the field and making a difference for the New York Giants. So I am ready and excited to see what he can do, and hopefully maybe he can help DJ become a better quarterback
the Jets
in a sense for this New York Giant team. We'll see what happens, man. I'm gonna still keep my
Listen, I'll be on my island until I'm not.
But but everybody, man, we appreciate y'all, man, for hanging out, man. We've been approaching that 2-hour mark, man. We're gonna get ready to wrap things up this week, man. Always like to end the show on a positive note. That's why I go back down memory lane a little bit, man. Reminisce, man, of the better days in New York Giant history, man. What's going on, Frank, man? Thanks for stopping in, bro. Appreciate you, man. Coming through, man. It's awesome, dog. So no doubt we're gonna wrap things up this week, man. Be back with y'all Wednesday for another edition. We'll be talking about them week 2 preseason matchups. Might talk about a little bit of what went down here in the week 1 matchups, man, for sure. And I'm MacDaGiantsFan. Fan. This is my guy Adam Costas, a super dope co-host, man. And in case you need to come back, check the replay out. Most definitely, you can check it out here, or you can also go to our Spotify channel. Check it out there, man. The Real Deal NFC's Roundup on Spotify, man. And you check all our latest episodes out right there too as well, man. So, like I said, I definitely appreciate y'all coming out. Make sure if y'all new to the channel, subscribe. To myself, Adam Costas, Hardcore Sports Network, man. Show us all some love. We all been out here grinding for y'all, man. It's football season in full effect, man. You're gonna get me and Adam each and every Wednesday each and every Wednesday until at least January. And like I said, if one of these teams make it to the Super Bowl, you're going to get
I guess we're going to the Super Bowl after beating the Lions in practice. So we'll be here until the New York Giants hoist the Lombardi in February.
So most definitely, man. Appreciate y'all once again, man, for coming out. And we'll be back next Wednesday, same time, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm Mac the Giants fan. This is my guy, Adam Costas. This has been another edition of the Real Deal NFC East Roundup. Pace. I'd like to thank you all for listening. If you was feeling this, please take time to subscribe and smack them likes. Feel free to drop a comment. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to ring that bell so you know when I'm dropping new content. It's your boy, Mac the Giants fan. You can find me on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook at Mac the Giants fan. That's MACDA Giants fan.